The California sun beat down on Camp Pendleton with the kind of heat that made the air shimmer like water. It was June 1996, and the Marine base sprawled across the coastal hills like a city built for warriors. At the center of it all, the sniper qualification range stretched into the distance, a ribbon of packed earth and steel targets that had broken more men than it had made. Reese Catherine Caldwell stood at the firing line, her boots planted, shoulder-width apart, her hands steady on the stock of an M40A1 rifle that was almost as tall as she was. She was 13 years old. Behind her, 40 Marines watched in silence. Some held coffee cups halfway to their lips. Others had cameras raised fingers hovering over record buttons. A few leaned against Humvees with their arms crossed, waiting for the inevitable failure. The morning had started with laughter. Now nobody was laughing. Colonel Thaddeus Brigham stood to her right, his weathered face unreadable beneath the brim of his cover. To her left, Master Sergeant Boone Hawkins, a man whose nickname Ironside had been earned through 2 decades of turning boys into killers, stared at the girl with something between disbelief and grudging curiosity. The silence stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Then Hawkins spoke, his voice carrying across the range like gravel sliding down a metal chute. "Colonel Brigham, you're joking, right? A little girl at the SEAL sniper qualification." Brigham's jaw tightened, but he didn't look away from Reese. "She requested it, Sergeant, and her father earned her the right to try." Hawkins turned, scanning the crowd until his eyes found Major Garrett Caldwell standing at the safety fence, one hand gripping the chain link, the other resting over his heart. The left side of Garrett's face bore the signature of war, a pale scar that ran from temple to cheekbone, the eye beneath it milky and unfocused. Hawkins looked back at Reese, and this time he smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "This ain't Girl Scout, sweetheart. This is where warriors are made." Reese met his eyes without blinking. Her voice, when it came, was calm, not defiant, not afraid, just calm. "Then let me prove I'm one, sir." For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then Hawkins threw back his head and laughed, a sound like thunder rolling across desert rock. The Marines behind him joined in their laughter, spreading like wildfire through dry grass. But Reese didn't look away, and she didn't smile. The title card appeared in the mind's eye of anyone who would hear this story told 24 hours earlier. The Caldwell house sat on the outskirts of Oceanside, close enough to Camp Pendleton that you could hear the artillery drills on quiet mornings. It was a small place, painted white, but faded to gray by years of salt air and sun. The backyard wasn't much, just a rectangle of packed dirt bordered by a sagging fence, but it held something most backyards didn't: a rifle range. Reese woke at 4 in the morning the way she had every morning for 5 years. No alarm, no prompting, just the internal clock that her father had trained into her like a second heartbeat. She dressed in silence, pulling on cargo pants and a black tank top, lacing her boots with the precise movements of ritual. By 4:15, she was outside. The air was cool, tinged with the smell of ocean and earth. She moved through her routine without thinking. 50 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, a 2-mile run through the empty streets where only the streetlights watched. By 5, she was back, sweat cooling on her skin, breath steady as a metronome. She cleaned her rifle in the half-light of dawn. The M40A1 was older than she was, a gift from her father when she turned 10. Most people would call that inappropriate. Garrett Caldwell called it necessary. The rifle was a tool, he'd told her, no different than a hammer or a saw. What mattered was the hand that held it and the mind that guided that hand. Reese broke down the bolt assembly with practiced ease, running a patch through the barrel, checking the crown for damage, inspecting the scope rings for any sign of movement. Every action was deliberate, every movement purposeful. This wasn't maintenance. This was meditation. Behind her, the screen door creaked. "You nervous, Ghost?" She didn't turn around. Didn't need to. Her father's footsteps were as familiar as her own heartbeat. "No, sir." Garrett Caldwell moved like a man who had learned to compensate for an injury so long ago that the compensation had become his natural state. He lowered himself into the folding chair beside her workbench, the same chair he'd sat in 1,000 times before. In the growing light, the scar on his face looked like a river carved into stone. "Good," he said. "Nerves make you human, but control makes you dangerous." Reese fitted the bolt back into place, feeling the satisfying click of metal on metal. "How many times have we done this?" she asked. Garrett was quiet for a moment, his good eye distant. 2,347 sessions. Give or take. And how many times have I missed? Doesn't matter how many times you missed Ghost. Matters how many times you got back up and tried again. She turned to look at him, then really look at him. He was 45 but looked older, the kind of aging that came from carrying weight that had no physical form. His hair was shot through with gray. His hands, once steady enough to thread a needle at 100 yards, now trembled slightly when he thought nobody was watching. "You taught me everything," she said quietly. "Every adjustment, every breath, every shot." Garrett reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip still strong despite the tremor. "I taught you the mechanics, Reese. But what you do with them, that's all you. That's always been you." In the distance, a rooster crowed. The sun was coming up, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Reese stood slinging the rifle over her shoulder with the ease of long practice. "I'm ready," she said. Garrett stood two slower joints, protesting. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, metal, glinting in the early light. Dog tags. Old ones, the lettering worn almost smooth. "These are from Kafji," he said, pressing them into her palm. "For luck." Reese closed her fingers around them, feeling the warmth of her father's hand through the metal. "You don't believe in luck, Dad." He smiled, sad and proud at the same time. "No, but I believe in you." The drive to Camp Pendleton took 20 minutes. Garrett drove his hands steady on the wheel in the way they only were when he had something to focus on. Reese sat in the passenger seat watching the landscape roll by. Scrub brush and sand, the occasional palm tree, signs that announced distances to places she'd never been. They didn't talk. There was nothing left to say that hadn't been said in 5 years of pre-dawn training sessions and afternoon debriefs. The silence between them was comfortable and the kind that only came from two people who had spent so much time together that words became optional. When they pulled up to the main gate, the guard took one look at Garrett's retired military ID and waved them through without question. The base opened up before them like a small city, all straight lines and purpose-built efficiency. Barracks, motor pools, obstacle courses where young men learned to push past the limits their civilian bodies thought were absolute. And at the far end, past the parade grounds and the rifle ranges, the sniper qualification course. Garrett parked in the visitor lot. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Reese spoke. "What if I fail?" Her father turned to look at her, his scarred face serious. "Then you fail with honor." "But you won't." "How do you know?" "Because failure isn't about missing the target, Ghost. It's about not taking the shot." Reese nodded, opened the door, and stepped out into the heat of the morning. She pulled the rifle case from the back seat, its weight familiar and grounding. Together they walked toward the range, father and daughter, moving in step without thinking about it. They could see the gathering before they reached it. Marines, dozens of them, clustered around the range entrance like spectators at a carnival. Word had spread. The little girl who thought she could hang with SEALs. The major's daughter who didn't know her place. As they approached, the conversations died. Heads turned, eyes tracked their movement with the predatory focus of men trained to assess threats and eliminate them. Reese kept her head up, her stride even. She'd learned long ago that showing fear was the same as showing weakness, and weakness invited predators. The crowd parted, and there, standing at the range entrance like a gatekeeper at the mouth of hell, was Master Sergeant Boone Hawkins. He was a big man, built like a refrigerator, with shoulders that suggested he could probably pick one up if necessary. His face was all hard angles and sun-damaged eyes, the color of faded denim. He wore the look of a man who had seen terrible things and done worse, and had made peace with both. Those eyes fixed on Reese, and his expression shifted from neutral to amused. "Well, well," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet space. "Who brought their kid to work today?" Laughter rippled through the crowd, not mean-spirited exactly, just the easy mockery of men who knew their place in the hierarchy and enjoyed seeing someone below them on the ladder. Garrett started to step forward, but Reese moved first. She walked right up to Hawkins, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, and when she spoke, her voice cut through the laughter like a knife through silk. "I'm here for the qualifications, sir." Hawkins blinked, surprised by the directness. Then he grinned a wolf's grin, all teeth and threat. "You're serious?" "Yes, sir." "Sweetheart, this is the SEAL sniper qualification. Grown men, trained warriors fail this course. Hell, most of them don't even finish. You understand that? I do, sir. Then why are you wasting my time? Reese didn't hesitate. Because I earned the right to be here, Master Sergeant. Every hour, every shot, every morning for 5 years. I didn't come here for sympathy or special treatment. I came here to qualify. The grin slipped from Hawkins' face. Something else flickered there, something harder to read. He looked past her to Garrett, then back to Reese. Your dad teach you to talk like that? No, sir. He taught me to shoot. I learned to talk on my own. A few of the Marines snickered. Hawkins' jaw tightened, but before he could respond, another voice cut through the tension. At ease, Sergeant. Colonel Thaddeus Brigham emerged from the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea. He was 55 with the kind of bearing that came from 30 years of command and the absolute certainty that came with it. His uniform was crisp, despite the heat, his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. He looked at Reese for a long moment, then at Garrett. Major Caldwell, he said, his tone neutral. Didn't expect to see you back on base. Sir, Garrett replied, standing straighter despite his injury. My daughter requested permission to attempt the qualification. I'm here to support her attempt. Brigham's eyes moved to Reese, assessing. She felt the weight of that gaze like a physical thing, probing for weakness, for doubt, for any crack in the armor. Miss Caldwell, he said finally, do you understand what you're asking? Yes, sir. The SEAL sniper qualification, 40 stages of increasing difficulty. Pass rate approximately 23%. Average completion time for successful candidates 6 hours. Required score 85% or higher. Brigham's eyebrow rose a fraction of an inch. You've done your homework. Yes, sir. For 5 years. The colonel was quiet for a moment, weighing something internal. Then he nodded a single sharp movement. Very well. But understand this, no special treatment, no second chances. You fail a stage, you're done. You quit, you're done. You follow every instruction from Sergeant Hawkins as if he were God himself. Clear. Crystal, sir. And if at any point you change your mind, if this becomes too much, there's no shame in walking away. Reese met his eyes without blinking. Respectfully, sir, I didn't come here to walk away. Something that might have been approval flickered across Brigham's face. He turned to Hawkins. Set her up on stage 10, Sergeant. Hawkins' head snapped around. Which stage 10 is intermediate level. Shouldn't we start her on basics? Miss Caldwell seems confident in her preparation. Let's see if that confidence is justified. Hawkins looked like he wanted to argue, but decades of military discipline won out. He turned to Reese, and this time his smile was different, sharper. Stage 10 it is. 300 yards, 5 moving targets, 12 mile per hour crosswind. You get 1 magazine, 5 rounds, hit all 5, you move on. Miss 1, you wash out. Questions? No, sir. Then let's see what you got, sweetheart. The crowd followed them to the range like a pack of wolves trailing wounded prey. Reese could feel their eyes on her back, could hear their whispers, their bets, their certainty that this was about to be the most entertaining failure they'd seen all month. She blocked it out. All of it. The voices, the stares, the heat, the weight of expectation. She'd learned to do this years ago in the backyard range, where the only audience was her father and the only expectation was her own. Stage 10 was set up at the 300-yard line. 5 steel silhouettes on motorized tracks moving laterally at variable speeds. The wind flag showed a steady crosswind right to left. The sun was higher now, creating heat shimmer that would distort depth perception. Reese knelt at the firing line, setting her rifle on the sandbag rest. She pulled the bolt back, visually confirming the chamber was clear, then loaded 5 rounds from the magazine Hawkins handed her. The brass gleamed in the sunlight, each round seated with the soft click of precision engineering. Around her, the world continued. Marines finding positions to watch, phones coming out to record. Hawkins standing to her right, clipboard in hand, his expression somewhere between skepticism and anticipation. Reese settled into position, cheek welled against the stock, eye aligned with the scope, breathing deep and even. She felt her heartbeat counted the rhythm. 72 beats per minute, steady. She closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she heard her father's voice, not from today, but from years ago, from the very first lesson. The rifle doesn't think ghost. It doesn't feel. It doesn't hope or fear. It's just a tool. But you're the weapon. And the most important part of any weapon is the ability to be still when everything around you is moving. She opened her eyes. The first target was moving left to right about 8 miles per hour. She let her breathing settle, let her body find the natural pause between exhale and inhale. In that pause, the world became very simple. Wind 12 miles per hour, right to left, subtract 3 mils. Target speed 8 miles per hour, lead by 2 mils. Distance 300 yards, no adjustment needed at this range. Her finger found the trigger. Not pulling, just resting. Waiting for the moment when body and mind and metal aligned. The moment came. She squeezed. The rifle barked, the recoil absorbed by her shoulder, the scope picture jumping and settling. 300 yards away, the steel target rang like a bell and jerked to a stop. The crowd murmured. Phones held steadier. Hawkins made a mark on his clipboard but said nothing. Reese cycled the bolt, the spent brass ejecting in a clean arc, a fresh round chambering with the smooth action of quality machinery. She found the second target, faster this time, moving right to left. She adjusted, breathed, waited for the pause. Squeezed, ring. The third target was the hardest moving in a figure-8 pattern. She tracked it through the scope, calculating, adjusting, feeling the rhythm of its movement like a dance she'd learned the steps to long ago. Squeezed, ring, fourth target, fifth target, each one falling to the rhythm of breathing and stillness, in 5 years of 4 a.m. wake-ups and hands cramping from the cold, and afternoons spent studying ballistics tables while other kids played video games. When the fifth target rang, Reese cycled the bolt one last time, ejecting the final spent case. She engaged the safety, set the rifle down with care, and stood. The range was silent. She turned to face Master Sergeant Hawkins. His face was unreadable, the clipboard held at his side like evidence of something he wasn't quite ready to acknowledge. 5 for 5, sir, she said, her voice level. What's stage 11? For 3 full seconds, Hawkins didn't move. Then slowly that wolf's grin returned, but this time it looked different. Less like a predator sizing up prey. More like a predator recognizing another predator. Stage 11, he said, his voice carrying across the silent range, is 500 yards with variable wind, and he stopped mid-sentence. Behind Reese, someone gasped. She spun around and saw her father on his knees, one hand clutching his chest, his face pale and slick with sweat. The crowd parted as 2 Marines rushed forward, supporting him under each arm. Reese was moving before thought, the rifle forgotten, the qualification forgotten, everything forgotten, except the sight of her father struggling to breathe. Dad. She reached him as the Marines lowered him to sit against the Humvee. His eyes found hers wide and apologetic. I'm okay, Ghost. He managed, his voice thin. Just a little dizzy. A corpsman pushed through the crowd, medical bag already open. He checked Garrett's pulse, his breathing shining a light in his eyes. Panic attack, sir, the corpsman said after a moment. Stress-induced. Heart rate's elevated but steady. You need to rest. Garrett nodded, but his eyes were still on Reese. Finish it, he whispered so quietly only she could hear. Don't stop for me. She knelt beside him, the dog tags he'd given her that morning digging into her palm where she'd clenched her fist. I can't leave you like this. Yes, you can, and you will. His hand found hers, squeezed with surprising strength. This is your moment, Ghost, not mine. I'll be right here. But you need to finish what you started. The corpsman nodded. He'll be fine, miss. Just needs to sit in the shade and hydrate. I'll keep an eye on him. Reese looked from her father to the range, torn between duty to blood and duty to purpose. In her father's eyes, she saw no doubt. Only certainty, only pride. She stood slowly, turned back to the firing line. The crowd watched with a different kind of attention now. Not mockery, not amusement. Something closer to respect, or the beginning of it. Hawkins stood where she'd left him, clipboard still in hand. When she approached, he didn't smile. You sure you want to continue, he asked, and there was no challenge in his voice. Just a question. Yes, sir. What's stage 11? For just a moment, something that might have been approval crossed his face. 500 yards, he said. Low light conditions. 3 targets. You have 2 minutes. Roger that, sir. She picked up her rifle, checked the chamber, loaded fresh rounds. Behind her, her father sat in the shade of the Humvee, the corpsman beside him, his good eye tracking her every movement. The sun climbed higher, the heat pressed down like a physical weight. Somewhere in the distance, artillery drills thundered the bass notes of American military might, reminding everyone within earshot that this was a place where warriors were forged. And on the firing line, a 13-year-old girl with her father's dog tags around her neck and 5 years of discipline in her bones settled into position and prepared to prove that sometimes the smallest person in the room was the most dangerous. The low light panels came down, dimming the targets to shadows. The wind shifted, now gusty and irregular. Hawkins started his stopwatch. "On your time, Caldwell." Reese breathed in, breathed out, found the stillness between heartbeats, and took the shot. Over the next 2 weeks, the impact of that single shot became clear. The enemy forces, suddenly leaderless, fragmented. Their coordinated attacks stopped. Their sophisticated ambushes disappeared. Small groups still operated in the sector, but the organized threat had been decapitated. American casualties dropped to nearly zero. But Kira's work was not done. With the main enemy force disrupted, she shifted her focus to providing overwatch for Ranger patrols, positioning herself where she could observe American movements and eliminate threats before they could materialize. 12 more confirmed kills over 14 days. Enemy fighters who thought they could take pot shots at American convoys. Militants who planted IEDs along patrol routes. Scouts who tried to re-establish observation posts. Each one eliminated before they could harm a single American soldier. The Rangers started calling her the Ghost, a guardian angel who appeared when soldiers were in trouble, who never missed, who saved dozens of lives and then vanished without a trace. Kira hated the nickname, but understood its necessity. The mystique, the legend, actually helped her mission. Enemy forces became cautious, paranoid about operating in the open. They knew there was a sniper out there somewhere, but they did not know where, when she would strike, or how to stop her. Fear was a weapon, and Kira wielded it effectively. Then everything changed. Day 31, intelligence reported increased enemy communications. Movement in the eastern sector. A new commander had arrived. Abu Rashid, al-Zurani's deputy, more cautious than his predecessor, more paranoid, and carrying a deep desire for revenge. He brought with him 60 fresh fighters, new weapons, and a fresh tactical plan. The attacks resumed with brutal efficiency. Day 32. Patrol Base Phoenix came under sustained mortar fire, 82mm rounds pounding the compound for 3 hours. The barrage wounded 2 Rangers, damaged 3 vehicles, showed a level of coordination that had been absent since al-Zurani's death. Kira watched from her overwatch position, counted the impact points, noted the pattern. "They are ranging us," she said to Gray, "testing our defenses, seeing how we respond." "Building a targeting package," Gray agreed. "This is reconnaissance by fire. They will hit us harder next time." Day 33 proved him right. Captain Brennan's team was conducting a routine patrol through Sector 4 when the ambush hit. Different tactics this time. The enemy did not try to pin them in a kill zone. Instead, they used a hit-and-run approach. Quick bursts of fire from multiple positions, then displacement before the Rangers could return effective fire. 1 Ranger killed, 3 wounded. By the time Kira could reposition to provide support, the enemy had already withdrawn. That night, she studied the after-action reports with growing concern. "Rashid is different from al-Zurani," she said to Gray. "Smarter, more disciplined. He knows we took out his boss with a long-range shot, so he is making sure we cannot do it again." "Everyone makes mistakes eventually," Gray replied. "We just have to be patient and wait for him to make his." But patience proved difficult when the attacks intensified. Day 34, a medical convoy was ambushed on the mountain road leading to the field hospital. 3 ambulances, 2 Humvee escorts, 8 wounded soldiers being transported for treatment. The enemy hit them hard. The call came in at 1100 hours. Kira and Gray were at their quarters when the radio crackled to life. "Any shadow element, this is Falcon 2-3. We are taking heavy fire on Rote Silver. Multiple casualties, request immediate support." Kira grabbed her rifle. Gray grabbed his spotting scope and rangefinder. They were in their vehicle and moving within 90 seconds. The ambush site was a nightmare. A narrow mountain pass with cliffs on one side and a steep drop on the other. The enemy had disabled the lead vehicle with an RPG, blocking the road, then opened fire from elevated positions on both sides. When Kira and Gray arrived at a ridgeline overlooking the ambush site, the situation was critical. Two medics were pinned down next to an overturned ambulance, trying to shield their patients from incoming fire. The Humvee gunners were returning fire, but they could not identify the enemy positions in the rocky terrain. "I count at least 15 hostiles," Gray said, scanning through his spotting scope. "Multiple fighting positions in the rocks. Range varies from 400 to 600 meters." Kira settled behind her rifle, began working through the targets systematically. The first was an enemy fighter with an RPG, preparing to fire at the remaining ambulances. She took him as he lifted the launcher to his shoulder. The rocket fell from his dead hands and tumbled down the cliff face. Her second target was coordinating the ambush, speaking into a radio while directing fire. He was partially concealed behind a boulder, only his head and shoulders visible. Kira put a round through his exposed chest. The radio went silent. She moved through the enemy positions like a reaper harvesting souls. A machine gunner who had been suppressing the convoy. A sniper who had wounded one of the Humvee drivers. Three fighters preparing to rush the disabled ambulance. Each fell with mechanical precision. Kira's shots timed to catch them in moments of vulnerability. The enemy force realized they were being hunted. Some tried to flee, scrambling up the rocky slopes. Others went deeper into cover, trying to hide from the invisible killer. Neither strategy saved them. Kira tracked the fleeing fighters through her scope, leading their movement, firing when they thought they were safe. The ones who hid she marked and waited for. Patience rewarded when they eventually had to move or expose themselves to check on their fallen comrades. In 8 minutes, she had eliminated all 15 attackers. The convoy was saved, the wounded soldiers secured, the road cleared for extraction. But Kira took no satisfaction in the victory. 15 more lives on her conscience. 15 more faces to see when she closed her eyes at night. "Good shooting," Gray said quietly. He understood what she was feeling, had felt it himself in Desert Storm. "You saved a lot of lives today." "I know," Kira replied. "Does not make it easier." They displaced from the ridgeline, heading back to Phoenix. Behind them, the medical convoy continued its journey. 8 wounded soldiers who would live to see another day, because she had been watching. That night, intelligence reported a disturbing development. Enemy radio intercepts had picked up specific references to the American sniper. Rashid was not just aware of her existence. He was actively working to counter her. 3 enemy snipers had been identified, operating in the northern sector, all equipped with Dragunov rifles, all tasked with one mission: find the ghost and kill her. "Tables turned," Gray said, reviewing the intelligence summary. "Now we are the ones being hunted." Kira studied the map, noting the sectors where the enemy snipers had been reported. "Good," she said. "Predators make mistakes when they think they are hunting." Day 36 dawned clear and hot. Kira and Gray established an observation post on a rooftop overlooking Sector 2. Intelligence suggested one of the enemy snipers was operating in this area. They waited. Sniper work was a chess match. Move and countermove, patience and discipline. The first one to make a mistake usually died. At 1400 hours, a ranger patrol moved through the street below. Standard 4-vehicle convoy. Routine security sweep. Kira watched through her scope, scanning the buildings ahead of the patrol. There, 4th floor window, slight movement of curtain. The angle was wrong for wind. Someone was in that room, watching the patrol. "Possible enemy sniper," Kira whispered. 680 meters, minaret at 2 o'clock. Gray acquired the position through his spotting scope. "I see it." Curtain moved again. "Someone is definitely there." They watched, waited. The ranger patrol passed beneath the window, continued down the street. Nothing happened. The enemy sniper had discipline. He was not taking a shot at a hardened target. He was waiting for something easier, softer. 6 hours passed. Kira remained motionless behind her rifle, Gray beside her with the spotting scope, both of them watching that window with the patience of stone. At 2000 hours, as the sun began to set, another patrol appeared, smaller this time. Just 2 Humvees, moving slower. The curtain moved again. This time a rifle barrel appeared, the distinctive profile of a Dragunov SVD, 7.62 millimeter. Effective range 800 meters. The enemy sniper was preparing to fire. Kira settled her crosshairs on the window. The target was partially concealed. She could see the rifle, part of a shoulder, but not enough for a clean shot. She waited. The Ranger patrol moved closer. The enemy sniper adjusted his position, leaning forward to get a better angle. For 2 seconds, his head and upper torso were visible in the window. Kira fired 685 meters through a window opening no larger than 18 inches. The enemy sniper jerked backward. His rifle clattered to the floor. The Ranger patrol below never knew how close they had come to losing someone. Hit, Gray confirmed. Target down. Hell of a shot. They displaced immediately. Standard operating procedure. Never stay in one position after engaging. One enemy sniper eliminated. Two more out there somewhere. Day 38 brought the second encounter. Intelligence had pinpointed the likely operating area of enemy sniper number 2. Sector 5. Urban environment. Lots of building. Perfect terrain for a sniper. Kira and Gray moved into position before dawn, establishing a hide in an abandoned apartment building. Third floor. Good fields of fire in multiple directions. The enemy sniper revealed himself through his own cleverness. He had set up a mannequin in a window, dressed it in military-style clothing, positioned it to look like a sniper. The decoy was good. Very good. To the untrained eye, it looked exactly like someone watching the street below. But Kira was not untrained. She studied the figure through her scope, noted the complete lack of movement, no adjustment of position, no shift of weight, no scanning with optics. Mannequin, she said to Gray. Second floor window at 4 o'clock. He is trying to draw us out. So where is he really, Wapam? Kira scanned the surrounding buildings, looking for the things most people would not notice. There, a glint of reflected sunlight. Third floor, different building. 40 meters to the left of the decoy. Someone was up there, watching the mannequin, waiting for an American sniper to take the bait. Got him, Kira said. 712 meters, third floor, southwest corner. She could not see him clearly. The position was too good, but she could see the faint reflection off his scope lens. The sun angle was perfect just for these few minutes. The enemy sniper shifted slightly. The reflection disappeared, then reappeared. He was scanning, looking for threats. Professional. Kira waited for the pattern to repeat. When the reflection appeared for the third time, she was ready. She aimed 6 inches below and 2 inches left of the reflection, where the shooter's head would be if he was in a standard prone position. Squeeze the trigger. 712 meters through a partially concealed position. The reflection disappeared. Did not return. Cannot confirm kill from here, Gray said. But I would bet money he is done. They waited another hour, watching. No movement from the position, no response from enemy forces. Later that day, local informants reported finding a dead fighter in that exact building. Dragunov rifle beside him. Single gunshot wound to the head. 2 down, 1 more to go. The third enemy sniper was different. Intelligence reports came back with an unusual detail. The third sniper was female, rare in enemy forces, which meant she was exceptional. Good enough to earn respect in a male-dominated world. That made her dangerous. Day 40. Kira and Gray were providing overwatch for a dismounted patrol when she saw it. A woman in civilian clothing, standing near a street corner, watching the patrol with too much interest. Normal civilians avoided American patrols, went about their business, did not stare. This woman was studying them, analyzing their movements, their spacing, their procedures. Through her scope, Kira could see details others would miss. The way the woman stood, weight slightly forward, like someone ready to move quickly. The slight bulge under her loose jacket, probably a pistol, and the way her eyes tracked the patrol, not with fear, with professional assessment. I think we just found number 3, Kira said. But before she could do anything, the woman disappeared into a building. 2 hours later, the same patrol came under fire. Single shots, precise, professional. 1 Ranger wounded, leg shot, not fatal but expertly placed. By the time Kira could reposition the enemy, sniper was gone. She is good, Gray said. Knows when to engage, when to withdraw. Textbook tactics. Over the next 3 days, the female sniper struck twice more. Always hit and run, always 1 or 2 shots. Then displacement before anyone could locate her. It was exactly what Kira would have done in her position. Day 43. Intelligence provided a possible location. A neighborhood in Sector 7. Reports of a woman matching the description seen entering and exiting a specific building. Kira studied the intelligence, then studied the map. Something felt wrong. "It is a trap," she said to Gray. "She knows we are hunting her, so she is hunting us." "How do you want to play it?" Kira thought for a long moment, then smiled. "We give her what she wants, but not the way she expects." They set up the counter trap carefully. Gray positioned a thermal decoy in a window, a heated blanket shaped roughly like a person. Set it up in an obvious sniper hide, the kind of position an amateur would choose. Kira established herself 2 buildings away, different elevation, different angle, watching the approaches to the decoy position. If the enemy sniper was professional, she would not rush. She would observe, wait for confirmation, then engage from a position that gave her both the shot and an escape route. They waited 4 hours. At 1500 hours, Kira saw movement. A woman, mid-30s, moving between buildings with tactical precision. She was flanking the decoy position, working her way around to get a side angle. Kira tracked her through the scope. The woman disappeared into a building 640 meters away. 3rd floor, east-facing window, perfect position to engage the decoy. Kira settled her crosshairs on that window, waited. 5 minutes passed. Then a rifle barrel appeared, the distinctive profile of a Dragunov. The enemy sniper was taking her time, observing the decoy through her scope, looking for signs of life, movement, breathing. Kira could see her now, partially visible behind the rifle. Professional stance, good positioning. The enemy sniper seemed satisfied. The rifle steadied, preparing to fire. Kira fired first, 640 meters, through the window, center mass on a partially concealed target. The enemy sniper fell backward, her rifle clattering to the floor. Kira kept her scope on the window, watching for movement, confirming the kill. Nothing. "Target down," Gray confirmed through his spotting scope. "Nice shooting." They displaced immediately, heading to extract. Later that day, friendly forces secured the building, found the enemy sniper, female, mid-30s, Dragunov SVD rifle, 31 tally marks carved into the wooden stock, 31 kills. She had been very good. Kira was better, but the victory felt hollow. She had just killed another sniper, someone who understood the profession, the discipline, the weight. That night, Kira sat alone in her quarters, staring at the tally marks she kept in a private notebook, not to glorify, but to remember. Each mark represented a choice, a life taken to save others. The number was growing, approaching 150. Gray found her an hour later, saw the notebook, understood without words. "You carry it well," he said quietly, "but I know it is heavy." "Does it get easier?" "No, but you learn to live with it because the alternative is worse." "What is the alternative?" "Not being there when someone needs you." Kira closed the notebook. Gray was right. The weight was heavy, but it was necessary. Day 42 brought new intelligence, major intelligence. Rashid was planning a massive attack. Target patrol base Phoenix. Estimated force 80 to 90 fighters. Heavy weapons. Vehicle-borne IEDs. Coordinated assault. Timeline 72 hours. Colonel Garrison called an emergency meeting. "The situation is deteriorating," he said without preamble. "Rashid has reconstituted his forces. He is hitting us harder than before. We need to disrupt their operations before this escalates into something we cannot control." Major Aldridge pulled up aerial photos of an enemy compound. Eastern suburbs, heavily fortified, guard towers, high walls. "This is Rashid's command post. But here is the problem. He does not expose himself like al-Zarani did. He stays inside, runs operations from a bunker, only moves at night with heavy security." Kira studied the photos. A direct assault would cost dozens of American lives. "What if we do not assault it?" she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "Explain," Garrison said. "A frontal assault plays to their strengths. They are dug in, prepared. They know we are coming. But what if instead of attacking the compound, we make them come to us? How? We give them a target they cannot resist. Make it look like we are vulnerable, overextended. Then when they attack, they walk into our kill zone. Garrison leaned back in his chair, considering. You want to use Phoenix as bait, not bait, a lure, with sufficient force to defend itself, but positioned to appear vulnerable. Rashid will see an opportunity to inflict massive casualties. He will commit resources to the attack, including possibly showing up himself to oversee the operation. And that is when we engage him, Garrison said, understanding dawning. That is when we engage everyone. We fortify Phoenix with more strength than it appears to have. Establish multiple sniper positions around the perimeter. Wait for them to come to us. When they attack, they walk into a perfectly prepared defensive position. The room was silent. I like it, Garrison said finally. But it only works if we can pull off the deception. If they suspect it is a trap, they will not commit. They will commit, Kira said with quiet confidence. Rashid is aggressive. He is trying to prove himself after al-Zirani's death. Give him what looks like an easy target, and he will not be able to resist. The plan was approved. Over the next 48 hours, Army engineers worked around the clock, reinforcing Phoenix with additional troops hidden in underground bunkers. Heavy weapons prepositioned but kept concealed. Kira established 4 sniper hides around the perimeter, each one carefully camouflaged, each one offering overlapping fields of fire. She would not be alone this time. Colonel Garrison had brought in 2 additional sniper teams, 6 shooters total. They could cover every approach to Phoenix. Remember, Kira told them during the final briefing, priority targets are command and control personnel, heavy weapons operators, anyone with communications equipment. We cut off their head and their ability to coordinate. Once they are in disarray, the base defenders can handle the rest. What about Rashid himself? One of the snipers asked. If he shows up, he is mine. I have been tracking him for 2 months. I know his patterns, his habits. If he is there, I will find him. The trap was set. Now they just had to wait. For 3 days, nothing happened. Phoenix operated normally, conducting patrols, establishing presence, becoming a routine feature of the sector. Enemy scouts observed it, undoubtedly reporting back to Rashid about this American position. Day 45, midnight. Kira was in her primary sniper hide, a warehouse 720 meters from Phoenix. She had been there for 14 hours. Watching, waiting. Gray was beside her and calling wind and temperature every 30 minutes, keeping her sharp. Coffee, he offered. Thanks. The coffee was cold, strong, perfect for staying alert through the long night. Kira pressed her eye to the scope, scanned the approaches to Phoenix one more time. Nothing yet. At 0200 hours, intelligence reported increased enemy communications, movement in the eastern sector. They were coming. Kira's radio crackled to life, coded transmission from Garrison. All shadow elements, this is Overlord. Stand by. Based on enemy communications, attack is imminent. Estimate 60 to 90 hostiles with possible heavy weapon support. Kira's heart rate remained steady, 52 beats per minute, her breathing calm, 4 breaths per minute. This was what she had trained for, what she had prepared for. When the Rangers whispered for a miracle in the darkness, she would answer. With precision, with skill, with purpose. The first mortar round whistled overhead, impacted inside Phoenix with a flash of orange light. The battle had begun. 48 hours after Reese Caldwell broke the Seal Cold Bore record, Camp Pendleton held a ceremony that would never make the news. This was 1996, before viral videos and internet fame, before every moment needed to be broadcast to the world. There were no television cameras, no reporters with microphones. Just 200 Marines standing in formation on the parade ground, the American flag snapping in the Pacific wind, and the weight of tradition pressing down like the hand of God. Reese stood at attention in clothes her mother had bought specifically for this day. Khaki pants that were slightly too long, a white button-down shirt that felt stiff and foreign after 10 hours in a sweat-soaked tank top. Her boots were the same ones she'd worn on the range, cleaned until the leather shone like black glass. Her father stood beside her in his dress uniform, the ribbons on his chest telling stories he rarely spoke aloud. Colonel Thaddeus Brigham stood at the podium, his voice carrying across the assembled formation with the clarity of 30 years giving orders. In 3 decades of service to the Marine Corps, he began, I have witnessed excellence in many forms. I have seen men push past limits they thought were absolute. I have seen courage under fire that defied explanation. I have seen sacrifice that brought hardened warriors to tears. He paused, his eyes finding Reese in the front row. But what I witnessed 3 days ago was different. Not because it was more courageous or more sacrificial than what I've seen before, but because it reminded me of something I had forgotten. That excellence has no age requirement. That discipline recognizes no gender. That the willingness to face impossible odds and the skill to overcome them can live in the smallest package. The formation was silent. 200 men who had learned to stand still in the face of anything now stood motionless as statues. Miss Reese Caldwell came to this base and asked for the right to attempt the SEAL sniper qualification. Many of us, myself included, had doubts. We see a 13-year-old girl and we make assumptions. We think we know what's possible and what isn't. Brigham stepped down from the podium, walked to where Reese stood and stopped in front of her. Miss Caldwell didn't just pass the qualification. She didn't just meet our standards. She exceeded them. She broke records held by men with twice her age and 10 times her experience. And she did it with a humility and professionalism that put many of us to shame. He held out a small wooden box, opened it to reveal a patch. The SEAL trident embroidered in gold thread on black fabric. Unofficial, symbolic, but real in all the ways that mattered. This is an honorary SEAL sniper qualification patch. To my knowledge, no civilian has ever received one. You are the first, Miss Caldwell, and I suspect you'll be the last because I don't think we'll see another shooter like you in my lifetime. Reese took the box with hands that wanted to shake, but didn't. She looked at the patch, at the symbol that represented everything she'd worked toward for 5 years, and felt something crack open in her chest. Not sadness, not joy, something bigger than both. "Thank you, sir," she said, and her voice was steady. "There's more." Brigham turned and accepted another item from an aide. This one was larger, heavier, a wooden plaque with a brass plate mounted on polished oak. The Camp Pendleton Marksmanship Trophy. The list of names engraved on the plate went back to 1952. At the bottom, freshly added, was a new name. Reese Catherine Caldwell, 1996. SEAL Sniper Qualification. Record 1 200 bars 2.8-inch group. This trophy recognizes the single finest shooting performance ever recorded on this range, Brigham said. Your name will stay on this plaque forever, Miss Caldwell. Long after we're all gone, Marines will look at this and remember what you did here. The formation erupted into applause. Not polite ceremony applause. Real applause. The kind that came from men who understood what it took to earn a place on that plaque and respected anyone who managed it. Through the noise, Reese saw Master Sergeant Hawkins approaching. The big man who had laughed at her 2 days ago now extended his hand with no trace of mockery. She shook it, feeling the calluses that matched her own, the grip of someone who knew rifles the way other people knew family. "I was wrong about you, Caldwell," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "I judged you before you ever picked up the rifle. That was unprofessional and unfair." "You pushed me harder than anyone, sir," Reese replied. "I needed that." Hawkins smiled, a real smile, this time nothing predatory about it. "You've got a future in this, kid. The SEALs would be lucky to have you when you're old enough. Hell, any branch would." "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know." He squeezed her hand once more, then stepped back and saluted. Reese returned it, 13 years old and standing in formation with 200 Marines who had learned to see her as one of their own. The ceremony ended as the sun reached its apex. Marines dispersed back to their duties, back to the endless cycle of training and preparation that defined military life. Reese stood with her father and mother in the shadow of the headquarters building, the trophy and the patch held carefully in her hands. Sarah Caldwell had watched the entire ceremony from the family section, her face a mixture of pride and worry that only a mother could wear. She approached now, placing a hand on Reese's shoulder. "You were amazing up there, sweetheart," she said softly. "Your father and I are so proud." But her eyes, when they met Garrett's, held a question that had been building for weeks. What happens now? What happens to a 13-year-old girl who just became famous for something most grown men can't do? Garrett saw the question. He'd been asking himself the same thing. That night, the Caldwell house was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that comes after something momentous has happened and nobody quite knows how to return to normal. Reese sat at the kitchen table, the trophy in front of her, the patch still in its box. She traced the engraved letters of her name with one finger over and over, as if the repetition could make it feel real. Sarah sat across from her, nursing a cup of tea that had gone cold an hour ago. "You know what happens on Monday?" Sarah asked gently. Reese looked up. "You go back to school, back to algebra and history and lunch period, back to being 14. She paused. "Can you do that after this?" It was the question Reese had been avoiding. She'd spent 5 years training for this moment. She'd achieved something extraordinary. And now what? Go back to homework and locker combinations and worrying about what other kids thought of her. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I don't know how to be both." "Both what?" "This." She gestured at the trophy. "And normal." Sarah reached across the table, took her daughter's hand. "You don't have to choose, Reese. You can be excellent at something and still be a kid. They're not mutually exclusive. But what if people at school treat me differently now? What if they see me as the girl who shoots instead of just me? Then they're not seeing all of you, and that's their loss, not yours." Garrett appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. He'd been listening. "Your mother's right, Ghost. What you did at Camp Pendleton doesn't define you. It's just one part of who you are. A big part, sure, but not the only part." Reese wanted to believe them, but the weight of the trophy felt like more than brass and wood. It felt like expectation, like a future that had been decided for her whether she'd chosen it or not. She went to bed that night with the patch on her nightstand, staring at it in the darkness, wondering if she'd made a mistake. Wondering if being good at something meant you had to build your whole life around it. The answer, when it came, would be harder than any shot she'd ever taken. Over the next 2 weeks, Reese tried to return to normal. She went to school, did her homework, sat with friends at lunch. But word had spread. The local newspaper had run a story. Oceanside teen breaks military shooting records. Her classmates looked at her differently now. Some with awe, some with suspicion, most with a distance that said she'd crossed into territory they couldn't follow. A boy she'd known since elementary school approached her locker one morning. "Is it true about the Marines?" "Yeah," Reese said, spinning her combination. "It's true. That's weird." "Weird how?" He shrugged, uncomfortable. "I don't know, just weird. Girls don't usually do that stuff." He walked away before she could respond. And Reese stood there, locker open, books in hand, feeling more isolated than she'd felt lying prone on a rifle range, surrounded by skeptical Marines. At least the Marines had come to respect her. Her classmates just thought she was weird. She stopped mentioning it, stopped talking about training. When someone asked what she did on weekends, she said not much, instead of explaining the hours spent studying ballistics or maintaining her rifle. She learned to be invisible again, to blend in, to pretend the trophy at home didn't exist. But at night, she still woke at 4 a.m. Body memory from 5 years of training. And she'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering why excellence felt so lonely. 2 weeks after the ceremony, Garrett collapsed at the kitchen table. Sarah called 911. Reese held her father's hand while they waited for the ambulance, feeling his pulse flutter like a bird trying to escape a cage. His face was gray, his breathing shallow. The eye that had been damaged in Kuwait seemed cloudier than usual, as if the injury was spreading inward. "I'm okay, Ghost," he managed, "just tired." But the paramedics' faces said otherwise. And when they loaded him onto the stretcher, Reese saw something in her mother's eyes that made her stomach drop. Fear. The Veterans Affairs Hospital in San Diego smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Reese sat in a plastic chair outside the examination room, her mother beside her, both of them waiting for words they already knew were coming. When the doctor emerged, his face told the story before his mouth did. "Mrs. Caldwell." "Miss Caldwell, I need to speak with you about Major Caldwell's condition." They followed him to a consultation room. White walls, a desk with pamphlets about hospice care and veterans benefits. The doctor gestured for them to do the same. "Your husband's cardiovascular system is severely compromised. The stress from his war injuries combined with the recent episode at Camp Pendleton And the collapse this morning has accelerated a deterioration we've been monitoring for several years. Sarah's hand found Reese's squeezed hard enough to hurt. The damage to his heart is extensive. Scar tissue from the initial trauma, arterial weakness, and now signs of heart failure. How long? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. The doctor hesitated. With aggressive treatment, possibly 6 months. Without it, weeks, maybe days. But I need to be clear, Mrs. Caldwell. The treatment would be painful, invasive, and would likely only prolong suffering without changing the outcome. At this stage, the kindest thing might be to focus on comfort rather than cure. The room tilted. Reese felt the floor drop away beneath her feet, even though she was sitting down. 6 months, weeks, days. Numbers that had always seemed abstract suddenly became the most concrete things in the world. "Can we see him?" Reese heard herself ask. "Of course, but I should prepare you. He's weak, confused at times. The oxygen deprivation during the collapse may have caused some cognitive impairment. He may not always recognize you." They went to his room. Garrett lay in the hospital bed, smaller somehow than Reese had ever seen him. The machines around him beeped and hissed, measuring the slow decline of a body that had already given more than it had to give. He opened his good eye when they entered. For a moment, there was no recognition. Then clarity returned like clouds parting. "Hey, Ghost. Hey, Sarah. You two look like you've seen a ghost yourselves." His voice was thin, reedy, so different from the command voice that had guided Reese through 5 years of training. Sarah went to him, took his hand, pressed it to her cheek. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face without sound. Reese stayed near the door, unable to move, unable to process the fact that the strongest person she'd ever known was lying in a bed he'd never leave. "Come here, sweetheart," Garrett said, patting the edge of the bed. Reese moved on autopilot, sat where he indicated, took his other hand. "Doctor tell you?" he asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Good. Don't want any lies between us. Not now. Dad, Shh, listen. I don't have a lot of time and I need you to hear something." His grip tightened, surprising strength in those trembling fingers. "What you did at Camp Pendleton. That record. That patch, all of it. I'm proud, Ghost. Prouder than I have words for. But I need you to understand something." He paused, gathering strength. "I didn't train you to be a shooter. I trained you to be steady. The rifle was just the tool I had. Could have been anything. Could have been music or math or running. Didn't matter. What mattered was teaching you that you could choose discipline over impulse, calm over chaos, that you could look at something impossible and make it possible through patience." Reese felt tears building, fought to keep them back. "You think I trained you to carry on my work, to be the shooter I couldn't be anymore. But that's not it. I trained you to carry yourself, to know that whatever life throws at you, you can breathe through it. You can find the stillness. You can take the shot when it matters." "But what if I don't want to be a shooter anymore?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "What if I want to be normal? What if I'm tired of being different?" Garrett smiled, sad and knowing. "Then don't be a shooter. Be whatever makes you happy. But take the stillness with you. Take the discipline. Take the knowledge that you can do hard things. That's what I gave you. Not a career, a way of being." Sarah was sobbing openly now. Reese felt her own composure cracking. "I'm scared, Dad." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." "What do I do after?" Garrett was quiet for a long moment. "You live. You find what matters to you, not what matters to me or the Marines or anyone else. You live as fully as you can for as long as you can. And when life gets hard, when you feel lost, you remember how to breathe, how to be still, how to find the pause between heartbeats." He reached to the bedside table with his free hand, picked up something wrapped in brown paper. He'd been saving it for this moment. "Open it." She unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a leather-bound book, worn and stained, the pages yellowed with age. She opened it and saw her father's handwriting, from years ago, notes and calculations and observations from his scout sniper training in 1889. "Every lesson I learned is in there," Garrett said. "Ballistics tables, wind reading techniques, mental exercises for staying calm. But more than that, it's got observations about life, things I figured out about fear and discipline and what it means to be steady when nothing else is." Reese turned the pages, seeing her father's younger self in every note, every carefully drawn diagram. The last 20 pages are blank, he continued. Those are for you, your lessons, your observations, your story. What if I don't know what to write? You will. When you're ready, you'll know. Over the next week, Reese lived in two worlds. School during the day, hospital at night, homework at the cafeteria table, vigil at her father's bedside. The dissonance was crushing. How do you solve for X when your father is dying? How do you care about the Civil War when you're losing your own war at home? Her grades slipped. Her friends stopped trying to include her. The trophy sat on her shelf gathering dust. The rifle stayed in its case. Sarah tried to keep things normal. Cooked dinner, did laundry, maintained routines. But her eyes were hollow, her movements mechanical. She was preparing for widowhood and everyone could see it. On the eighth night, Garrett was lucid enough for a real conversation. Sarah had gone to get coffee, leaving father and daughter alone. Ghost, I need to tell you the whole truth about CAFG. Reese sat up straighter. They'd talked about Kuwait before, but always in broad strokes, never details. You know the shot, the 12 Marines, the shrapnel. Yes, but I never told you what happened right before. His good eye was distant now, seeing across years and miles to a desert he'd left behind, but never truly escaped. There was a young Marine, 20 years old. Name was Phillips. He'd joined my unit 2 weeks earlier. Green as grass, scared out of his mind. And when the ambush started, when the enemy sniper had us pinned, Phillips froze, just completely locked up. Garrett's voice was soft, remembering. I could have taken the shot immediately. Should have. But Phillips was in my line of fire, and he was too terrified to move. So I had a choice. Take the shot and risk hitting Phillips, or wait and risk those 12 Marines. What did you do? I talked to him while bullets were flying, while men were dying. I talked Phillips down, told him to breathe, to move on my count. It took 45 seconds. 45 seconds of watching those Marines get pinned down tighter and tighter. But you got the shot. I did. Phillips moved. I fired, hit the target, saved 12 lives. But in those 45 seconds, I made a choice that still haunts me. What choice? I chose one scared kid over 12 experienced Marines. And I don't know if that was right or wrong. I just know it was human. Reese understood then. Her father wasn't just telling her a war story. He was telling her that the hardest shots weren't about distance or wind. They were about choices that had no good answer. The freeze you had at stage 15, Garrett continued, when you couldn't tell if you'd hit the civilian. That wasn't failure, Ghost. That was you being human enough to care about the choice. And that matters more than any record. Sarah returned with coffee and the conversation shifted to lighter things. But the lesson remained. Shooting wasn't about perfection. It was about making impossible choices and living with them. 3 days later, Garrett slipped into unconsciousness. The doctor said it was a matter of hours now. Maybe a day if his heart held. Sarah and Reese took shifts at his bedside. Neither wanted him to die alone. Reese was there when it happened. It was 3 in the morning. The hospital was quiet except for the machines. She'd been reading her father's journal, absorbing his notes about breathing and patience and the space between decision and action. She looked up and his breathing had changed. Slower, shallower. The machines beeped less frequently. She took his hand. Dad, can you hear me? No response, but his fingers moved slightly. He was still there, still present. I want you to know something, she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. I'm going to be okay. You taught me how. I'm going to find my path, whatever that is, and I'm going to stay calm, just like you taught me. His breathing slowed further. Thank you for everything, for the early mornings, for the patience, for seeing me as capable when everyone else saw a kid. Thank you for teaching me that I could do hard things. One more shallow breath, then stillness. The monitor changed from its rhythmic beeping to a single continuous tone. Nurses rushed in, confirmed what Reese already knew. Major Garrett Caldwell, Marine Scout sniper, Gulf War veteran, father and teacher, was gone. Reese sat with him for another hour, holding his hand as it grew cold, whispering goodbyes she'd never fully prepared to say. When Sarah arrived, Reese stood and let her mother have time alone. She walked to the hospital chapel, sat in the empty room, and finally let herself break. The funeral took place on a Tuesday morning at Camp Pendleton. Full military honors, the kind of send-off reserved for those who had given everything to the Corps and never asked for anything back. The sky was overcast, threatening rain that never quite came, the air heavy with moisture and unspoken grief. 200 Marines stood in formation, the same formation that had applauded Reese 3 weeks earlier. Now they stood silent as pallbearers carried Garrett's flag-draped coffin to the gravesite. Master Sergeant Hawkins was one of the bearers, his face set in the hard lines of military discipline that allowed no room for tears. Colonel Brigham delivered the eulogy standing at the podium with the kind of gravity that 30 years of military service brought to moments like this. Major Garrett Caldwell served his country with distinction for 20 years. He made shots that saved lives. He trained shooters who went on to serve with honor. He gave his sight in defense of his brothers in arms and never once complained about what that cost him. Brigham paused, looking at Reese where she sat in the front row, her mother on one side, the empty space where her father should be on the other. But his greatest accomplishment wasn't anything he did in uniform. It was what he taught his daughter. Not just how to shoot, how to be disciplined, how to stay calm under pressure, how to push past what everyone says is possible and find out what actually is. The honor guard raised their rifles, 7 Marines' weapons at the ready. Major Caldwell gave his sight for his country, but he gave his wisdom to his daughter, and through her to all of us. The command came sharp and clear. Ready, aim, fire. The first volley echoed across the cemetery like thunder. Reese flinched despite herself. 7 rifles speaking in unison, the sound of military farewell. Ready, aim, fire. The second volley. Reese felt each shot in her chest, felt them echo through her bones, the way her father's lessons had echoed through 5 years of training. Ready, aim, fire. The third and final volley. 21 shots total. The last honors for a warrior who had earned them in blood and sacrifice, in the quiet determination to be better than circumstance allowed. A bugler played taps. The mournful notes drifted across the cemetery, each one a goodbye that would never quite be final. 2 Marines folded the flag that had covered the coffin, precise movements that turned cloth into a perfect triangle. They presented it to Sarah, who accepted it with shaking hands. But Sarah immediately turned and gave it to Reese. He would have wanted you to have this, sweetheart. Reese took the flag, felt its weight, felt the weight of everything it represented. Her father's service, his sacrifice, what he'd built and then given to her. She stood, walked to the coffin, and placed her hand on the polished wood. In her pocket was the dog tags he'd given her before the qualification. She pulled them out, held them for a moment, then set them on the coffin beside a small wreath of white flowers. "I'll make you proud, Dad," she whispered. "I promise." The gathering dispersed slowly. Marines offering condolences in the gruff, awkward way of men who dealt with death professionally but grief personally. Hawkins approached last, stood beside Reese for a long moment without speaking. "Your old man was one of the best," he said finally. "He trained you right. Honor that by living well." "I will, sir." He nodded, then surprised her by pulling something from his pocket, a small wooden box. "This is from the Scout Sniper Association. It's called a hog's tooth. We give it to snipers who've proven themselves in the field. Your father earned his in Kuwait. We want you to have one too, for what you did on that range." He opened the box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a spent rifle cartridge, brass polished to a mirror shine. "You earned this the same way he did, through skill, discipline, and heart. Welcome to the Brotherhood, Caldwell." Reese took the box, her vision blurring with fresh tears. "Thank you, sir. This means everything." 3 months passed. Reese returned to school, but she was different now. Quieter, more distant. The girl who had broken Marine records felt like someone else, someone from a different lifetime. She stopped training. The rifle stayed in his case, gathering dust. The backyard range grew weeds. When classmates asked about her father, she gave short answers and changed the subject. Sarah worried. She saw her daughter withdrawing, saw the light fading from her eyes, but didn't know how to help. Grief had its own timeline, its own process. All she could do was be present and wait for Reese to find her way back. September arrived with cooler temperatures and the promise of autumn. Reese turned 14 in a quiet celebration that felt hollow without her father there to make his traditional terrible birthday jokes. She went through the motions. School, homework, sleep. Repeat, existing in the gray space between grief and forward motion, not quite one and not quite the other. But on a Saturday morning in late September, she woke before dawn. Old habits died hard, and instead of lying in bed staring at the ceiling, she got dressed, grabbed her father's journal, and drove to Camp Pendleton. The range was empty this early, just her and the wind and the distant sound of artillery drills. She walked to the memorial garden to the spot where her father's plaque had been installed. The plaque was simple, black granite with white lettering, Major Garrett Caldwell, Scout Sniper, 1951-1996. Who taught that the greatest gift is not what you achieve, but who you teach. She sat cross-legged in front of it, opened the journal, and stared at the blank pages he'd left for her. What do you write after losing everything? Her pen hovered over the page. Then slowly words came. Day one without you. I don't know how to do this yet, how to be me without you here. But you said I was ready, so I'm going to trust that, even when it doesn't feel true. She wrote for an hour, pouring grief and confusion and questions onto the page. When she finally stopped, her hand cramped and the sun was fully up. Thought I might find you here. She turned to see Colonel Brigham approaching 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offered her one. She took it, grateful for the warmth. Couldn't sleep, she said. Me neither. I come out here sometimes, when I need to think. He gestured to the memorial. Your father and I served together, 20 years ago. He was the best spotter I ever had. Reese hadn't known that. Her father rarely talked about his service beyond the broad strokes. What was he like back then? Brigham smiled, remembering. Stubborn, precise, demanded excellence from everyone around him, but most of all from himself. But he was also kind, patient, the kind of leader who made you want to be better because he believed you could be. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, watching the morning light change. Finally, Brigham spoke again. I have a proposition for you, Caldwell. Sir, we want you as a junior marksmanship instructor, teaching basic rifle skills to new recruits. Weekends only, so it doesn't interfere with school. You'd be the youngest instructor in Marine Corps history. Reese looked at him surprised. I'm 14, sir. I should be in school doing normal kid things. You'll still do those things, but you have knowledge worth sharing. And frankly, I think your father would want you to pass it forward. She thought about it, about standing at a firing line, about teaching, about carrying forward what had been given to her. I have one condition, sir. Name it. I teach them what my dad taught me, that the rifle doesn't make you dangerous. Discipline does. That shooting isn't about power. It's about staying calm when everything else is chaos. Brigham smiled. I wouldn't have it any other way. Think about it. When you're ready, let me know. He left her there alone with the memorial and her thoughts. Reese looked down at the journal in her lap at the words she'd written. Then she turned to a fresh page and wrote one more thing. Day one without you. I'm going to teach. Not because I have to, because I want to, because you showed me that what we learn only matters if we share it. I'm ready, Dad, or at least I'm going to try to be. She closed the journal, stood, and placed her hand on the memorial one more time. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. 6 months later, on a clear April morning in 1997, Reese Caldwell stood before 15 Marine recruits on the basic rifle range. She'd grown taller in the months since her father's death. Her voice had gotten stronger, but the humility remained, the quiet certainty that came from knowing what mattered and what didn't. The recruits ranged in age from 18 to 22. All men, all looking at their 14-year-old instructor with varying degrees of skepticism. My name is Reese Caldwell, she said, her voice carrying across the range with the confidence her father had taught her. I hold the SEAL cold bore record at 1,200 yards. I qualified for SEAL sniper standards at 13 years old. She paused, let that sink in, saw the doubt on some faces, the surprise on others. But that's not why I'm teaching you. I'm teaching you because my father taught me something that changed my life, and I'm going to teach it to you. She walked along the line of recruits, making eye contact with each one. Shooting isn't about the rifle, it's about you, your breathing, your discipline, your ability to stay calm when everything around you is screaming at you to panic. Master that, and you'll master the rifle. Master the rifle without mastering yourself, and you'll be mediocre at best. She stopped in front of a young recruit named Torres. He looked nervous, his hands fidgeting with his rifle sling. You, what's your name? Torres, ma'am. You look nervous, Torres. Yes, ma'am, never shot a rifle before. Good. That means you don't have bad habits to unlearn. Come with me. She took him to the 100-yard line, set up a target, handed him a rifle. First shot is always the hardest, she said, not because of the distance, because you don't trust yourself yet, but you will. I'm going to teach you how. Over the next 6 hours, Reese worked with Torres and the other recruits, teaching them breathing exercises, trigger control, natural point of aim, all the fundamentals her father had drilled into her over 5 years of dawn training sessions. By sunset, Torres was hitting the target center mass. The other recruits had gone from skeptical to attentive, asking questions, taking notes, treating their teenage instructor with the respect earned rather than given. As the recruits left, one of them approached Reese, older than the others, maybe 25. Miss Caldwell, I just want to say, I didn't think I'd learn anything from someone your age. I was wrong. What you taught today about breathing and discipline, that's going to stick with me. Thank you. Reese felt something warm bloom in her chest, not pride exactly, something deeper. Purpose. You're welcome. See you next week. When the range was empty, she stayed. Walked to the far end of the base to the memorial garden to her father's plaque. She knelt before it, pulled the hog's tooth from her pocket, and placed it at the base of the plaque beside where the dog tags had been. I taught today, Dad, 15 recruits, and I think I was good at it. Not because I'm the best shooter, but because I remembered what you taught me, that it's not about the weapon, it's about the person holding it. The wind moved through the memorial garden, rustling the trees. I'm going to keep doing this, not because of the record or the patch or any of that, because it feels right, because it feels like I'm carrying forward something that matters. She stood, looked at the memorial one more time. I miss you every day, but I'm okay. You made sure of that. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Reese turned and walked back toward the parking lot, her father's journal tucked under her arm, her path forward clearer than it had been in months. She didn't need to be the best shooter, didn't need to set more records or prove anything else to anyone. She just needed to teach, to share what had been given to her, to help others find their own stillness. That was enough. That was everything. And as she drove away from Camp Pendleton, the setting sun in her rearview mirror, Reese Caldwell knew that her father's greatest shot wasn't the one that saved 12 Marines in Kuwait. It was the patience and discipline he'd fired into his daughter's heart, one early morning at a time, until it became who she was. That shot would echo forever.